Okay, we're going to get started, and I'm sure people are going to trickle in after lunch, so appreciate you all getting over here quickly. My name's Lauren. I'm going to be your room host today. It's my pleasure to be here with my colleague, Diana. We've got a great presentation for you today. 2 quick things. Hold your questions till the end, please. And then also, after this, get on your app and leave some session feedback. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So, without further ado.
Thanks, Lauren. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First, I want to say thank you for making the trek here. I know it's far, and I know there were some competing sessions potentially, like the VIA Copilot roadmap, but specifically because of that, I'm excited that you are here because we're going to see a little bit about how intelligent decisioning and copilots are really complementary in the enterprise landscape, and especially since copilots are a way you can easily interact with the system, while intelligent decisioning is what gives you a structured, governed, and secure way to actually tell the system how to think and operate. And on top of that, at 3 p.m., there's another session I have on agentic AI and its roadmap, what we're doing there with my manager, Brett Wujek. So if you want to come to that one, we're also going to talk about how intelligent decisioning integrates in an agentic ecosystem. Today, the entire presentation is going to walk through a single moment in time, and that is a decisioning moment for the enterprise. Whether that is in the domain of risk, whether it's in the domain of customer intelligence, of whether it looks at organizations that make decisions in the healthcare realm, the reality is that all of them need now to make decisions in a faster, more reliable way, and without losing trust. And all of this has to happen at a way higher scale than ever before. So the challenge today, you saw SAS has been with our customers for 50 years through challenges across making data available, having models readily available and reliable. But now that challenge actually moves from having data and models, which we do, to how we actually leverage them in production. So what happens and why, what's missing when AI doesn't make it to production? Most of AI never reaches production in over 50% of the cases, as some of the bigger analyst firms are estimating. And we are aware, and we, from our conversations with customers, have realized that this is actually an issue that has nothing to do with data science, but more so with integration failures. So decisioning or AI fails because we don't have these explicit governed decisioning systems to put it into practice at scale within the enterprise. So when you think about leveraging AI in a real production system, where does it break mostly for you? Is it in the deployment? Is it in the compliance or in the ownership realm? If you answered yes to any of these, you're not alone. So that's where we see a lot of our customers having trouble with getting the best out of using AI in production. And a team, for example, will train a Python model that in order to make it to production, that Python model needs to be rolled into a bunch of custom wrappers just to operate in production. They need to use custom APIs, and that makes it really difficult when something goes wrong and you need to roll back to your model. Then you have to unwrap all this custom code that you put around it. And many times you're not able to trace back to what the model version was, what it was doing, so you end up falling back to hard-coded logic. Another example is with business rules, right? Like sometimes your business processes are represented in different sources, right? Like you might have spreadsheets, you might have a Java application here, you might have a SQL database in another place. So in order for an AI project to actually make it to the next release, you have to coordinate across all these different sources in order to have the full picture of your data. So imagine how difficult it is if that communication is broken down between your teams handling all these separate systems. Intelligent decisioning was built to close that gap, and the way it does it is through three essential pillars. The first one is that we embed governance controls directly in your decision process. We call it the decision flow, and I will talk a little bit about what those capabilities are for governance embedded in the flow. But essentially what we're doing with this is that we want to allow for strong traceability as well as ownership of every change within your process. Second, we offer rich decisioning features. What this means is that we have some pre-built constructs that every domain can leverage in order to speed up that process to getting their flows into production. And with this comes also repeatability, right? Like if you have a decision or a business rule or logic represented in a unit that is repeatable, then you can more easily track where the breakdown happened, what do I do to replicate it, and so forth. And third, we focus on deployment at scale. So we want to make sure that our customers are able to leverage these decision flows in a repeatable manner so that they can get trusted automation out in the world in every use case they have. In this case, the point would be to not just design the decision once and then have to repeat that process every single time, but make sure that you operationalize it and evolve it and get feedback from that process so that you can continuously improve it as it goes through your production processes. And what I do want to highlight also is that decisions don't operate just in one place within your organization. They have to operate across the entire enterprise and across all the elements within your analytics lifecycle. So they have to take advantage of data that was processed and cleaned and with assured quality. It also needs to take advantage of models, AI models, traditional models, as well as language models that you can put in the flow. So while here it shows up at the end of this cycle, it's really an orchestration layer across the entire analytics lifecycle. And the decision is really the outcome when you see the end goal, but the process and the framework operates across that entire analytics lifecycle. So we have this operational layer, but the reality in the enterprise is that you might have multiple domains across your organization. Across the same org, you have different domains with their own constraints. You might have, if you're a bank, credit origination, but also making offers to your customers. So if each of these domains has its own constraints and you use its own tools to implement each of these solutions, then it becomes really difficult to orchestrate and have the big picture of what your organization looks like. So intelligent decisioning actually offers this foundational layer that you can apply across all the domains within the enterprise. That foundational layer takes care of the orchestration for you. It takes care of the governance, the execution, so you can get it into production, as well as the telemetry, so you can look back into how effective your decisions are. And if specialized flows are built in isolation with different tools, logic, governance, you will end up with a lot of inconsistency and blind spots. So with intelligent decisioning, we're trying to remove not only the technology silos, but also the intelligence silos. And let's think about if you're a bank, right? So you have a process for origination, and then you think, what if I could use that same information in, for example, collections, or giving my customer the next best offer for their credit card, or any other products across the organization? You don't want to have to rebuild everything from scratch. Similarly, if you're, I don't know, like an insurance claims company, you might want to leverage information from when you onboarded a client, as well as information from across when they made the different claims in their life cycle. You don't want to create that image of the client every single time in a separate system. So that's what we're achieving with the foundational tools that intelligent decisioning offers. Again, orchestration, governance, execution, and telemetry. And this can execute across different providers, so you are not stuck with one vendor. You can leverage your own infrastructure with these foundational decisioning tools, and then you can also leverage SaaS solutions that bring up some more specialized constructs on top of those foundational elements. Now, let's look at the framework for decisioning. I mentioned, you might have all these different inputs and ways to represent your business processes. With intelligent decisioning, we bring all of those inputs from your business processes, from different databases, or let's say unstructured data from an LM, or images that you get. For example, when you have a claim, you can upload the image of that claim, if it's maybe a car accident, hopefully not. And so you can leverage all this to get your insights. Then, with those pre-built elements, you can represent your business processes, your intelligence, as well as your guardrails into business rules that are repeatable, that are versioned and tracked across the entire process. And then you can apply also for getting more intelligence in this process, you can apply SaaS models as well as open source models. Everything can be deployed as either an agent, either in real time and in batch, and the whole process does not need to be rewritten for these different deployment options. But essentially, the outcome of this is not just a score that you get from the AI model, it's an actual outcome. So you put together the models and your business knowledge, your business process, your documents, policies, processes across the organization, and at the end of it, you get an actual recommendation or an action that the system can take for you. For example, yes, order this product from my vendor, or yes, send that email with the offer to my customer. And so we don't just get a number, it tells us what to do with it. And that is very powerful when you want to take advantage of AI, right? You don't want to spend too much time interpreting it in different manners over again. So I talked about the components of the decision, and about, again, here is just going a little bit more in detail about what the possible inputs are. So I mentioned a little bit about being able to leverage both structured and unstructured data. For structured data, I guess everyone is familiar with database access. For unstructured, we can leverage things like documents, right? Like you have medical records that you can bring in, read all that into your decision flow to get the best, most accurate picture. Then business rules span really across the intelligence and the guardrails in order to define basically your context, your semantics. What does something high risk mean to my organization? Is it 0.8 score, or is it 0.6? For every organization, it might be something different. And finally, those outcomes, the decision you can execute and rely upon. So just to give you a quick picture, I'm going to flash how it actually looks in the intelligent decisioning interface. So most likely, you will have something where you standardize your data and where you enrich your data. So you can reach into maybe a credit bureau to get information about your applicant, what's their credit score. Or you can reach in your database to see how long they had their account with us. You can also incorporate deterministic and language models within that flow, depending on the level of risk that operation pertains to. And most importantly, you can incorporate or model specifically human-in-the-loop triggers. So this is how you track where your humans were actually involved in this process. And you can actually specify what type of actions they are supposed to be taking. And ultimately, you have the definition and the logging and tracing of your automated outcomes. In order to make all this possible, this image hopefully represented very well the orchestration layer. But now, in order to make that a deployable unit, we have capabilities to execute that flow through APIs and channels that are low latency. And this execution follows a paradigm that ensures that you don't have to rewrite your decision flow every time you need to deploy it. You can write it once and deploy it to many destinations. And when I'm talking about destinations here, it's you can deploy it in memory, so leveraging the services that you have on your SAS Viya platform. You can also deploy it in database, so you don't have to move your data from where it lives in order to just execute this decision on it, which also gives you a lot of speed. And we can also execute in stream. So then you take advantage of real-time analytics to trigger events and execute these decisions on those specific events. Another point that's very important is that for its execution in real time, we have options to containerize these decisions, make them a unit that can be deployed on its own, standalone from the Viya platform to execute in the cloud, whether that's Kubernetes or a managed cloud service. This can execute without calling back into Viya, which, first of all, gives you a lot of control. It also saves a lot on the infrastructure. The decision unit becomes very small and efficient. And lastly, you don't have to have such a large technological footprint, right? You can just deploy this container that is a standard OCI compliant container, execute the decision without having the entire Viya platform call back to. So to wrap up that idea, on the design side, you will leverage the SAS Viya stack. On the execution side, you will execute it as its own standalone container that saves you both on the technology footprint, but also gives you a lot of flexibility when you have a lot of spikes in your usability and data that you need to execute over. The containers can be scaled up and down based on that need. So let's talk a little bit about the other pillar, which is governance. With intelligent decisioning, you get two types of governance. One is at the decision level. So we have versioning as well as traceability within the decision. So whenever you execute a decision, you can generate a diagram that shows you the points that the data took through your decision flow and how it made it to those outcomes. And that shows you not only the nodes, but also the reason codes for how that executed. It gives you what rules were fired in order to get to a particular next node. Outside of the decision, we also have an application that comes by default in the SAS Via stack that's called SAS Lineage. And what this gives you is the full path of the data from the access point through the ETL processes, through the model pipeline, and into the decision flow, all the way to the outcome. So that's very powerful auditability there. Now, let's talk a little bit about what are we shipping next. So in the world of AI and in the world of decisioning, we've always looked at removing friction, right? One way to do that, or several ways, were already covered in the way we orchestrate things across that analytics lifecycle, making that handover from data to model to outcome very easily accessible and streamlined. But now we're looking at how can we leverage more of the AI, the generative AI, within these processes. And in the next couple of releases, we are going to introduce, and you saw this earlier on stage, a RAG language model node. So what that gives you is the ability to not only call a language model within your process flow, but also ground it in your own enterprise knowledge. So you can connect collections of documents that you securely store and build within VIA or within an application like Retrieval Agent Manager. You can securely connect those using your own permission, authorization, authentication mechanisms, and connect them within the decision flow. So you don't have to break or fragment that process going outside of the decisioning product into just in order to retrieve some document information. Now you have it embedded in the decision flow. And some of these cases are very important, especially in highly regulated environments, where you have to check what are the most up-to-date policies or regulations that I need to take into account when I make my decision. So some of those examples are for policy interpretation, regulatory guidance, but also you can use that for checking on previous use cases or cases that were analyzed through the decision flow. So you can see if you're working on something like a review and you're an analyst that looks at that and has to make a split-second decision on, okay, it's not very clear whether this is fraud or not, but I have all this policy information in previous cases that I can look at from my colleagues, from what my enterprise defined I should follow. This saves you a lot of time to be able to scroll through that historical information, through that built-in knowledge from within your enterprise. So let's have a look at how this actually looks in intelligent decisioning. So you already saw, hopefully, this in the main session this morning. And it's going to start with the LM node where you can pull in some of those collections that you built in VIA. Your collections here, we're looking at a fraud case, and the collections are policy documents and cases that were previously analyzed and reviewed by an analyst. So I can easily select from the set of collections of documents that I have, that I am allowed to access. And I can also do some configuration changes regarding the model and the retrieval. So you see that the outcome that I get from the LM is not something that it invented. It leveraged those same documents in order to give me the insight that I needed, the recommendation that I needed. In spaces like claims management, where now you have to ensure that you have all the documents and an approval or decline on that needs to happen within 7 seconds, it's really important to make sure that you have all this analysis available to you in less than 7 seconds, right? So you can leverage it to suggest to someone, hey, you need to add more information to this claim. All right, so second, it wouldn't be an AI presentation if we didn't talk about agent ecosystems. And how do we plug in the decision flows into this agentic system? And I'm pretty sure that if I ask for a show of hands here with who is worried about governance in the agentic world, everyone would put their hands up, right? And that's exactly why we're changing, or we're adding a way to make these decision flows available as part of a larger agentic workflow. So instead of embedding the logic into agents, instead of your teams building that logic with every single agent tool implementation they have, now we can publish decisions as part of an agent's list of available tools they can leverage. And in this way, decisions are utilized, not re-implemented, and not left to the variability of an agent, especially when you have very high stakes use cases. So let's see how that is represented in intelligent decisioning. Again, this is the use case that you saw with the grocery store. You have your decision flow. You have your rules, models that you can leverage within that flow. And eventually, you get to that final decision. So now I could use this in an application with an interface that my grocery store managers have access to. But more and more, they want to interact in natural language, right? They don't want to have to go and input data in a UI. So many of them want to take advantage of the agentic and chat interfaces for this. So once we built our decision, now we can publish it as an MCP tool. And what that does is leveraging a market-accepted standard to make these decisions usable as a tool to the agent. The agent can instantly discover them. And we're offering this interface so that you don't have to build custom wrappers around your decisions to make them available to agents. The interface is there for you. It automatically pulls up the description of the tool, and then it gets saved as a tool for the agent to use. When you interact with the agent, this is just an example. It could be any agentic system that your enterprise defines. You will see that the answer that it provides actually calls back to the decision. That decision gets executed on VIA. So you ensure that you not only have this repeatable unit of logic, but it's also governed, right? Like you can take advantage of all those logs and the flow that tracks where the data went through every step of your decision flow. And that gets tracked in the same way when an agent uses versus any other application. And we talked about these two capabilities, by the way. We're looking to publish or release within the next couple of releases here on Intelligent Decisioning on VIA 4. So keep an eye out for that announcement. You can go on our documentation page and under What's New. And we'll likely also announce it a little bit more in our VIA highlights show. But outside of just building the flows and leveraging them in agents, we're going to talk also about what's new or what's coming next in the entire decision intelligence space with VIA. So we're currently building our VIA Copilot for intelligent decisioning. And current capabilities include being able to ground answers from Copilot in our own documentation. And what that gives you is essentially a quicker way to onboard your developers, also to answer their questions as they're going through that development process. Next, we're looking to ground not only the decisions, but our own Copilot grounded into your knowledge as well as SAS knowledge, so that you don't get generic prompt responses. You get very informed responses back from Copilot. So that is now. Next, we're looking at governed action. And we talked a lot about the MCP standard and how that shows up with external agents using intelligent decisioning. But in Copilot, we're also looking at defining capabilities of intelligent decisioning as tools. So whenever we interact with Copilot, it doesn't only give us a text back, but it gives us an action, so it can create something for us. And I'll describe a little bit more what those actions will be. And finally, we're looking at guided intelligence. So our Copilot will have some flows and capabilities and intelligence built in from the industry-specific cases. So in this case, it will become domain-aware and industry-specific, and you can leverage those within your different teams, across different teams that are specialized in every single domain. A little bit about what's next in terms of actions within the Copilot. So we're looking at AI-assisted design, where you'll be able to create your own decision flows, create the rules between that, but more so also test those decisions, so it will be able to generate test scenarios for you that will be able to more quickly identify what are the extraneous cases that I'm dealing with, what should I be modifying within my decision to make it optimal. And also for the more C-level users of this, it will be able to explain the business representation of that decision, what it does, what should I understand from the outcomes it provides. Next, we're going to take that to a guided improvement capability. So Copilot will be able to analyze the outcomes of executing tests or scenarios of your decisions and provide you with some recommendations of how you can improve it. And lastly, all of this is continuing to be controlled and governed within the VIA ecosystem and leveraging those same governance tools that we have there so that you can take advantage of them without the possibility of losing trust. And in the future, before I wrap, I just want you to think about if our Copilot will be able to continuously watch one thing that you do. Maybe it's data drift or policy changes or decision outcomes. What would you pick? And that's the shift that we're going to make. Copilot won't just respond to your questions. It will observe the decisioning ecosystem. And then rather than taking some actions on its own, it will present you with a set of actions that will help you respond to those same alerts that it brought up for you. And those same recommendations, this way they will stay grounded in the capabilities for RAG that I mentioned before. They will stay governed, and they will guide us towards improved decision processes, all with the human still staying in control. So that's all I had, and I think we're ready for questions if you have any. And please, you should come up front to the microphone if you do. Yeah, I mean, the guardrails that you have in place is actually checking for that completeness. You already have a process that is defined within the organization that tells you, okay, I need 10 documents, right? So if one of them is not present, then you can set a rule to stop that process or take it to another route where it interacts with the user, maybe through a chat interface, but asking them for more information in that case. And there are other guardrails. For example, when you maybe reach to a third-party application, you can set it up in a way that it checks that actually the call happened and what's the reason behind not having that information at hand, whether it was a system failure or a data inconsistency failure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess if there are no questions right now, I do want to talk to you about where you are today. If you have thought about leveraging an automated process like that to put your models and AI into production. And if you don't have an answer now, we're still at the Innovation Hub in the AI decisioning section. So stop by and talk to us.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So the SAS Decision Intelligence is a part of VIA interface, right?
Yes.
Is it available right now, or it is because of we got it 2026 March stable release, but I don't see this interface.
Yeah, so it is part of VIA. As far as offerings, it's only part of the VIA Enterprise offering, which gives you the full stack of applications, or you could leverage it as a separate license on its own, but it's not part of every one of the offerings we have for VIA. So we have standard VIA, VIA Advanced, VIA Enterprise, and it only comes at that last offering group.
So you mentioned the data modeling, then you can create an image from the containerized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Suppose if you change your process, like either data processing model technique, then you have to recreate the image and containerize it again?
Yes, you would have to republish it just to use the latest update. Everything else doesn't have to change.
Okay.
But in order to pick up the latest definition, or there are ways to configure it. So we have something called mass scoring node that actually takes the dynamic version of something that was published and brings it into a current design step. So you could do that. There are ways to configure it, but by default, you would have to republish that into a new container. And there are ways to actually update the container from there automatically. And the reason for that being also, you want to track the version, right? Like you don't want to lose the history of what was published before. So many times we leverage that versioning mechanism so that you can roll back to something if something changes, just from a auditability and governance perspective, it makes sense.
How about what type of, you can use any LLMs or we have any specified targets?
For the, yes, you can integrate with any LLM. I only had, for the node that I showed where you leverage RAG, you're actually constrained to the LLMs that are associated with that collection because the collection was evaluated. So the document collection was created outside of our product. It was evaluated with a set of LMs that work with it. And that is configured more by an admin type user. So then you are constrained to selecting just from the ones that were associated with those documents. But in general, if you don't leverage the RAG part of it, then you can select any other LM. And we're looking to improve even that RAG section to allow for anything. It's just, there's some security considerations, right? Like if someone enabled only one or two LMs in your system for those documents to have access to, then you probably don't want to overlook that.
Yeah, even we want to do LLMs on the cloud, we can do it on-prem, the company's security policies, you know?
Yeah. So you can bring your own LM for those collections, yes. And there is, that reminds me, there is a section on Retrieval Agent Manager I believe it is tomorrow, and it's also available in the Try It section in the Innovation Hub if you want to learn more about that process of defining your collections and what LMs you want to use with it.
Anybody already using this SAS Decisioning?
Yes, we have mainly financial services customers, global companies. We have, thousands of, customers of those banks that end up being impacted by the decisions. So we have anywhere from small, medium-sized companies to enterprises. The great thing about it is that maybe I didn't stop too much on that, but with large enterprises, when you have multiple teams developing different parts of the decision ecosystem, that versioning and control that you have comes very handy because everyone is working in sync, and you can pick up a version of a subcomponent that another team developed and bring it into your flow very easily.
And then we had again the GitHub to tie up with the GitHub, right?
We have our own versioning mechanism within Intelligent Decisioning. You could, whenever you publish a decision to a registry, like for the container to execute, you also have the option to save it to GitHub. So you could have a version of it tracked there if that's the source of truth that you want to go with. You don't have to only rely on our versioning. But at edit mode during design time, we have our own versioning that ensures that all the traceability, for example, we can track where a variable is used, in which decisions, and in which objects of that decision it is used. So that's not something that we can easily integrate into GitHub. So for that reason, for reporting and auditing, we leverage our own. A very good question. Thank you. Anyone else? I will just mention something to wrap up. A thank you to our sponsors who made this conference possible. And you should go check them out in the Innovation Hub. They have some really cool projects to demonstrate. I think we're good. Thank you. Thank you.